as the lust lasts. And lust lasts, it has a time frame, you get me? I'm telling you, even if it's always there, it's subsiding, you need something else to build that. So I think and I think you understand that, but I think it's harder to find someone who's young enough to be childbearing who you can get that with. No, you can get that with, but I just think the approach of dating now doesn't incorporate that, bruv. And maybe that's what needs to be incorporated with, and it will filter out kind of a lot of fucking um girls who just not on that mentality. But the ones who are on that mentality, those are the ones you build with because there's an understanding that it's about teamwork, you get me? And then that's where you get your family and everything else because actually the concept of that's being a team. Sometimes you can do it accidentally, and actually because you got a child, then the teamwork starts if you're with her or not. Sometimes, but that's harder for the reasons I said before. You get me? So, but if I were you, I always said if I was 40 now, I'll look for a girl. There, there is a fucking age where you can't even expect that. So I say you look for 21 plus, and it is possible 21 plus. I'm a product from it. Trust me. I'm a product from it. I'm a product from it. My dad was was late 30s. My mom was late teens, but they had that emotional connection before got married and then had kids, but because it was about the teamwork and the emotional connection and both having do you know what I mean? And that can be sometimes a little bit lost in things. It's all about what can you do for your partner and the expectation. And when that dies down, then it's almost seen as that time people will move on. I think if you're serial dater, that's the time to move on and find someone else. Whereas if you got that emotional connection from the start, that's your first test and challenge, you get me? And you work through it and then you go stronger. And I think people don't want to do that. That's like seen as failure nowadays when no, that's part of the journey. You get me? The minute you get to 30 plus, you can get that. But again, if you're looking for children and that, more time they've got children already, so you can step into that stepfather role and whatever else. But then again, sometimes that has its own problems as well. Do you know what I mean? I'm not even gonna lie. So I think 30 is fine, but then you get different barriers. And then as you get older, the women are probably good, but then you lose that element of creating a family with them. Well, not lose it, but it's harder. It's less of a percentage. So if I was in your situation, I'd be looking at early 20s, literally. And but understand it's going to be harder because what's portrayed in the media is a more for feminism, but the concept that a woman can do everything independently, yeah, you can, but then in regards to a relationship, it's fucking difficult, man, because there's too much ego there. Same with nowadays. Well, in fact, now you can. That's another conversation altogether. But I'm thinking the betrayal in that sense. I always think it's more difficult for you to. It's just more difficult. There's more barriers nowadays than there was probably back in the day. You get me to get to know someone without without an ulterior motive being sought out, or they ripping you apart before you have a chance to know them personally. If you don't have the money, you don't have the car, you don't have the looks, if you don't have the rete, or you can have all of that, but then there'll be something else that the girlfriends will be saying, "Oh, no, 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 not me, not me. I'll ditch it." You know what I mean? There's not a sense of kind of loyalty anymore in that sense. But yeah, that's my two pennies, fam. I'm from a guy who's been with a girl for 20 years. So it could be all a load of shit because I don't experience it. But I look at why I'm with my bird for 20 years. And I've looked at people who've been them for 10 years and then broke up. So I've seen people go through that point of view. I've seen people who do the 6 months. I've seen people do the year. And that's the one concept I think helps with longevity. You immediately look at yourself as a team or as early as possible because then you look future and then actually the true emotional connection kind of starts. It gets past the lust. You get me? It's about the trust and it's about. Do you know what I mean? In that sense. So, but that would be my approach all the time. Whether it's right or wrong, I think that's the most righteous approach because then at least then you do yourself justice. You get me? In that sense. I think that's how you got to approach it. And it's not saying you can't tune, but it's not saying you can't tune birds for different reasons. But if you want that emotional connection, then those are the ones you seek out. You get me? I always said with Nisha, like Nisha might be everyone's cup of tea, or she's my cup of tea certainly. But there was always always saying with Nisha, attracted Nisha from looks, but immediately within the first week, it's like there was a similar sense of direction, if that makes sense. So it was worth, regardless of working in the bar and doing red hair, it's worth saying, well, Nisha's a good one, and I know that we have similar ideologies when it comes to a lot of things. So actually, that puts her far ahead of even the girl around the corner who a lot of other people perceive as, you know what I mean? It just puts her above that straight away because I could see longevity. I don't know, but I'm probably chatting shit at this stage. And my situation's always, everyone's situation is always different. But when I look at things now, I think, fucking hell, man, it's so hard to find a niche now for me. You get me? Even I think even in nowadays, society would have fucked up either me or Nisha, so we probably wouldn't have even bucked up in each other. That's how different things are. We wouldn't have probably wouldn't even buck up each other in the same circumstances if we were with each other. If I think about back in the day, I'm yeah, there'd be time, yeah. Nowadays, it probably wouldn't last just because of how society is. Even if I look at like social media and and all of that shit, yeah, fucking hell, man. Uh, so there's a little bit of that as well. It's been at the right place, right time as well. But yeah, nowadays you have to look at it from that perspective. But you have to, well, but it's outside because I obviously I'm not tuning girls. I don't know what that, but that's what how I see at the moment from my point of view. Even having the youngsters around me who's my brethren's kids and how they are with their brethren's and and without being funny, bruv, as I say, Tion Bianca's daughter and Cerise Adams' daughter, Tion Bianca's son, Cerise Adams' daughter, they're 20. So actually, with the greatest of respect, within the next year or two, these are the people I'm talking about, and this is their mindset coming into that. So it is what it is, bruv.